Hey, naturalist Steph here. I'm at Wilson Lake checking out some of the trails. We're going to take a look and see what's blooming today. One of the things that we have out here at Wilson Lake in pretty huge numbers is this plant right here. And this is not blooming yet. We just have the leaves popping up. This is called Trout Lily. Sometimes people call it fawn lily as well, and it gets its name from the speckles on the leaves. It kind of looks like a brook trout. And there's actually a pretty huge colony of it here in this group. They like to grow in these big masses, and we're not going to see blooms on these guys for a little bit. Typically I only see blooms once the plant's a few years old. And at that point, instead of putting up just one of these individual little leaves, like this, it'll actually put up a pair of leaves. So I think I see a couple of leaf pairs back a little bit further into the colony. So we'll check those out maybe next week and see if we have any blooms yet on those guys. But for now, we just have these individual young plants putting up their leaves. They're very waxy and kind of unusual looking. But also in the mix here, we have a super common spring wildflower called Spring Beauty. And this is one that you're going to see all over the place. And it kind of varies from white to pink, but it's a very common one, so you're going to see it absolutely everywhere before too long. Today's the first day that I've actually seen it blooming, so that's kind of nice. It's a first of year Spring Beauty. But these guys you'll even get even in your lawn sometimes. One of the neat things about Spring Beauty is that the tuberous roots are actually something that Native Americans and early settlers would actually cook and eat, so it was something that you could consume. Although I would hate to do that personally because it's such a pretty little perennial. I wouldn't want to do that to it. Oh my goodness, you guys, I was wrong. Trout Lily is blooming. And you can see what I mentioned about how plants that actually bloom have these pairs of larger leaves. It's in this colony, and there's actually several of them blooming out here, but it's hard to see. So this is white trout lily. There's also a yellow trout lily. It's the same genus, but a different species, but overall pretty similar plant. And I will post a little bit more info about it in the photo album, the spring photo album, but I just wanted to show you guys. Look what a cool plant this is. There's several of them out here. Growing up, I had a huge colony of these things in my backyard. My backyard was very swampy. It was always one of my favorites. It's a beautiful kind of bell-shaped flower. And behind it we have all of the... I'll have to refocus. But behind it we have all of the Dicentra cucularia, I believe it's called. All of the Dutchman's breeches. Or breeches. Quite a bit of that too. This is a really great day for wildflowers, guys. I found one of my favorites. One of my absolute favorite spring wildflowers. This is Rue Anemone. And I don't see too much of it out here, so it's exciting to see it. And it looks like can't have been open for too long. You can kind of, one of the ways you can identify it compared with some of the other plants are these little tri-lobe shaped leaves. And again, this is one that you'll see in a couple of different color varieties. Sometimes it's a little paler, sometimes it's pinkish. But it's absolutely one of my favorites. I'm really excited that I found it, guys. It's kind of tucked away in the shadow of a tree, so if you're out here looking for it, you got to keep your eyes peeled. A lot of these early spring wildflowers, like these Dutchman's breeches, are often referred to as spring ephemerals. And the word ephemeral just means temporary or short-lived. And that's because these plants often have a very narrow bloom time. Some will make it a little bit longer than others, but for the most part, these guys, some species of spring ephemeral actually only bloom for a day or two. So make sure that you're getting out and enjoying them while you can, because a lot of these will not be around for very long. But spring ephemerals have a really important role in the environment of a woodland, even though they are only present for a short period of time as a bloom anyway. One of the things that they're really important for is providing a source of nectar for our native bees and other pollinators. Things like Dutchman's breeches have a special design that makes it accessible almost exclusively to things like our native bumblebees. And as the bumblebees, they overwinter as queens, and they're starting to emerge this time of year. They're hungry. They need to start building up a new colony, or start laying eggs and doing the different things that our native pollinators need to do. They need a source of food, and so these guys are really important sources of food for some of those early insects and some of the early butterflies that are emerging this time of year when there's not a whole lot else blooming. So they're super important for that. But they're also super important because they provide this awesome green growing carpet of our woodlands, and you can see quite a few plants out here. May not all be in focus, but lots and lots of spring ephemerals carpeting the woodland at Wilson Lake right now. And it's really important this time of year because they help hang on to water and nutrients and things like that during a time when the trees may not have all quite woken up yet. And they help keep some of that stuff in the soil and in the area rather than allowing things like more runoff and things like that to happen. So they're actively hanging on to soil, they're actively hanging on to the moisture and things like that during a time of year when that stuff could be lost. So they serve a really important job in hanging on to things. And there are actually some plants that do a really important job with some of the different soil nutrients and making sure that those are available for other plants later in the season. So spring ephemerals, they're only around for a short period of time, but they have a lot of really important functions in nature, especially of a shady woodland area like what we have here at Wilson Lake. Well, this is a cool little flower. This one has the common name Tostitos, or cat's foot, because the little flowers are soft and fuzzy, like a kitty cat's toes. It's a very unusual looking one, very pale. I see it a lot just in a couple of localized places here at Wilson Lake, but it's a fun one to keep an eye out for because it's very soft and fuzzy. Looks like an ant is checking out looking for some nectar. But yeah, I'll post some more information about Tostitos, or cat's foot, in the pictures in our album, but I just wanted to show you guys. Look how cool. This is another thing that's blooming right now at Wilson Lake. Look who I found! This is a tiny frog. This is actually his full size. I believe this is a chorus frog. And it is one of the frogs that, if you check out our director Nathan's video on frogs that he made, the frog calls, this is a super common frog. And yes, it is absolutely as big as they get. They're teeny tiny little guys. And they are everywhere this time of year. When you're listening to frogs, something that's kind of cool to know is that it's only the males that are making those songs, that are singing, because they are singing for the ladies trying to find a mate. And that is what is happening out in nature this time of year. So these guys are absolutely everywhere here at Wilson Lake. So as you're walking around the lake and maybe some of the smaller ponds, keep an eye where you step, because these guys will be absolutely everywhere underfoot around the areas. I'm gonna go ahead and let this little guy go. I think he'll be very happy to go. Okay. See you, little chorus frog.